The message reached Earth 12 hours after the meeting ended. Deep beneath the lunar surface, in tunnels carved from solid rock, Admiral Jack Turner received the coded transmission. 2 clicks, pause, 3 clicks. Operation Heritage was active. Jack had been waiting for this moment for 30 years. He stood in the command center of Facility 7, a base that officially did not exist. Around him, technicians worked at consoles that monitored systems most of humanity had forgotten. The screens showed power levels, atmospheric readings, and structural integrity reports for ships that had been sleeping in the dark for 3 centuries. "Begin the awakening sequence," Jack ordered. Chief Engineer Amy Patterson nodded and began entering commands. Her fingers moved across controls that looked ancient compared to modern interfaces. No holographic displays or neural links here, just physical switches, analog gauges, and systems built to work when everything else failed. "Hangar Bay 1 responding," reported Lieutenant Sam Davis from his station. "Power coupling stable. Atmospheric systems online." Deep in the moon's crust, massive doors that had not moved since the resource wars began to groan open. Emergency lighting flickered to life in caverns large enough to hide cities. The air recycling systems coughed to life, clearing 3 centuries of stale atmosphere. In Hangar Bay 7, the USS Indomitable sat in the darkness like a sleeping giant. The ship stretched nearly 2 kilometers from bow to stern, its hull scarred by weapons that no longer existed. Thick armor plating covered every surface, welded and re-welded so many times that the original metal was barely visible. The Indomitable had been built during the darkest period of human history, when Earth's nations fought over the last oil reserves and fresh water. The ship's designers had one goal: create something that could survive anything and keep fighting. They succeeded too well. Colonel Greg Collins walked through the ship's corridors with a team of engineers. His footsteps echoed in passages wide enough for damage control teams to run through during battle. Everything about the ship was overbuilt. Corridors that could serve as backup life support, walls thick enough to stop projectiles, and power systems with 5 layers of redundancy. "Main reactor is cold but intact," reported Chief Petty Officer Nina Stone. She stood beside a fusion plant the size of a small building. Modern ships used reactors 1/10 this size, but they also broke down if someone sneezed on them wrong. "This monster was built to run for decades without maintenance." "Weapon systems?" Collins asked. "All 6 main batteries show green," Stone replied. She ran her hand along a railgun barrel that could punch through a mountain. "Ammunition stores are full. Nuclear arsenal is secure and ready." Collins nodded and moved to the next system. The Indomitable carried enough firepower to level a continent, but that was not what made her special. What made her special was that she could take damage that would destroy any modern vessel and keep fighting. In Hangar Bay 12, Major Beth Carter supervised the awakening of the carrier Devastator. The ship looked like a flying city, her hull bristling with launch tubes and defensive weapons. Her fighter bays could hold 300 craft, each one built for one purpose: killing enemy ships at close range. "Fighter Squadron 7 reporting ready status," came a voice over the intercom. "All birds are fueled and armed." The fighters were relics from humanity's civil wars, heavily armored craft that looked more like flying tanks than modern interceptors. They were slow, ugly, and absolutely lethal in the hands of a skilled pilot. More importantly, they were built to operate in conditions that would kill modern pilots. "Squadron 12 ready?" reported another voice. "Bombers loaded with nuclear ordnance." Carter smiled grimly. Each bomber carried enough nuclear weapons to glass a city. The aliens with their energy shields and adaptive defenses had never faced weapons that simply vaporized everything in a 10-mile radius. Admiral Turner moved from hangar to hangar, watching as humanity's sleeping fleet came back to life. The heavy cruiser Relentless powered up her main guns, weapons that fired projectiles at 10% of light speed. The destroyer Iron Wolf tested her missile systems, tubes that could launch nuclear-tipped torpedoes faster than most ships could react. Each vessel told a story of human survival. The battleship Thunderbolt had been designed after Earth's cities started burning. Her armor could shrug off nuclear strikes and her weapons could level enemy strongholds from orbit. The dreadnought Sovereign had been humanity's last hope during the water wars, a ship so powerful that her mere presence could end battles. "All ships report ready status," Amy Patterson announced. "Fleet integration protocols are online." Turner looked at the main display, which showed 67 ships of war spreading across multiple hangar bays. Each one was a nightmare from humanity's darkest period, when survival meant being more ruthless than your enemies. Communications? Turner asked. All ships have received updated tactical data, reported Communications Officer Dan Brooks. Crews are boarding now. The crews were volunteers from across Earth's military, veterans who had trained on museum pieces, engineers who understood analog systems, and weapons specialists who knew that sometimes the old ways worked best. They boarded ships that their great-grandfathers had built and their grandfathers had crewed. Captain Helen Davis climbed aboard the Relentless and felt history settling around her shoulders. The ship's bridge looked like something from a historical documentary: physical controls, backup systems for the backup systems, and crew stations designed for manual operation when computers failed. All stations report ready, her executive officer announced. Take us out, Davis ordered. The Relentless moved through the hangar bay doors like a predator emerging from its den. Her hull was scarred and patched, her design brutal and functional. She looked nothing like the sleek vessels the galaxy expected from an advanced civilization. Major Paul Adams watched from the command ship Sovereign as the ancient fleet assembled in lunar orbit. 67 ships that should have been scrapped centuries ago instead floated in perfect formation, their crews running final systems checks. Admiral Turner, to all ships, came the voice over the fleet comm. You know what these vessels represent. They were built when humanity faced extinction and chose to fight instead of surrender. Today we face the same choice. The bridge of the Sovereign fell silent as Turner continued. The aliens see primitive ships crewed by barbarians. They see weapons they consider obsolete and armor they think is useless. They are about to learn why humanity survived when more advanced species did not. On the main display, Earth hung like a blue jewel against the stars. Around her, the ancient fleet spread out in attack formation. These ships had been built for one purpose: to take whatever punishment the enemy could dish out and keep fighting until the enemy was destroyed. All ships report ready for combat operations, Patterson announced. Turner looked at Earth one last time. Somewhere out there, alien fleets were preparing to teach humanity its place in the galactic order. They would arrive expecting to face frightened primitives in flying scrap heaps. Instead, they would face the accumulated fury of a species that had learned warfare in the ruins of their own civilization. The Zephyrian Armada appeared at the edge of Earth's solar system like a storm of living crystal. 300 ships materialized from hyperspace, their hulls shifting between solid matter and pure energy. Each vessel hummed with power that could reshape reality itself. High Commander Vexthal stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Radiance. The ship existed in 17 dimensions simultaneously, its exotic matter core capable of bending space and time. Around him, holographic displays showed the pathetic human response: 67 primitive vessels crawling out from behind Earth's moon. Tactical analysis complete, reported Sub-Commander Krelnith. Human fleet composition matches previous intelligence. Obsolete chemical propulsion systems, crude kinetic weapons, nuclear warheads of ancient design. Vexthul studied the enemy ships with something approaching pity. The human vessels looked like they had been cobbled together from scrap metal. Their hulls were thick and ungainly, covered in patches and repairs. No elegant curves or advanced materials, just brutal functionality that belonged in a museum. Their largest ship measures 2.1 kilometers. Krelnith continued. Mass readings suggest primitive armor plating. No exotic matter signatures detected. No quantum shielding. No dimensional phasing capability. The Zephyrian fleet spread out in perfect formation. Each crystal ship moved with fluid grace, their energy fields creating rainbow patterns in the void. The Helix Consortium vessels hung nearby like floating cities of metal and light, their quantum computers calculating millions of battle scenarios per second. Prime Calculator 7 transmitted tactical data to the Zephyrian flagship. Human vessel construction appears to prioritize mass over efficiency. Armor thickness exceeds optimal parameters by factor of 12. Weapon systems show primitive targeting mechanisms, 12 times thicker than necessary, Vexthul mused. Wasteful engineering from a species that understands neither efficiency nor elegance. The Corvin Federation bioships pulsed with eager anticipation. War Leader Thokvar commanded 50 vessels that could adapt to any threat in real time. His flagship, the Living Fang, had evolved defensive systems that learned from every attack. Human tactics appear limited to direct confrontation, Thokvar growled over the comm. No subtlety, no adaptation. They point their ships at enemies and fire until something dies. The alien commanders shared their amusement. Humans truly were primitives playing at warfare with toys left over from their barbaric past. Captain Rachel Turner stood on the bridge of the Thunderbolt and watched the alien fleet arrange itself for battle. Her ship had been built during the siege of New Geneva, when human cities burned under orbital bombardment. The designers had learned hard lessons about what happened when enemies controlled the high ground. Enemy fleet in attack formation, reported Weapons Officer Tony Chen. 300 contacts confirmed. Energy signatures off the scale. Turner nodded calmly. The bridge around her looked ancient compared to modern standards. Physical gauges, manual controls, and display screens that showed simple graphics instead of holographic projections. Everything was built to work when power failed, when computers crashed, when elegant systems proved too fragile for real combat. All stations report ready, announced Executive Officer Kim Walsh. Damage control team standing by. Emergency systems online. The Thunderbolt's damage control teams were the ship's secret weapon. 50 engineers trained to repair battle damage while under fire. Equipped with tools that could patch hull breaches with whatever materials were available. The ship could lose half her systems and keep fighting. Admiral Jack Turner coordinated the human fleet from the command ship Sovereign. His bridge was a maze of redundant systems and backup controls, designed by engineers who assumed everything would break at the worst possible moment. Enemy is moving to engagement range, reported Communications Officer Lisa Park. All ships confirm ready. Status. Turner looked at his tactical display. 67 human ships against 300 alien vessels. The odds would have discouraged any reasonable commander. Unfortunately for the aliens, the humans had stopped being reasonable centuries ago. Signal from the Zephyrian flagship, Park announced. High Commander Vexthul requests one final opportunity for surrender. Turner smiled grimly. Tell him we appreciate the offer, but we're busy today. The first Zephyrian energy beam lanced across space like captured lightning. It struck the heavy cruiser Relentless amidships, a weapon designed to dissolve molecular bonds and reduce matter to component atoms. The beam played across the ship's hull for 3 seconds, enough energy to vaporize a small moon. When the light faded, the Relentless was still there. Direct hit on Relentless, reported scanner operator Mark Johnson. Hull temperature elevated but no structural damage. Captain Davis reports all systems nominal. High Commander Vexthul stared at his displays in confusion. The energy beam should have destroyed the human ship instantly. Instead, it had barely scorched the primitive armor plating. Increase power to maximum, he ordered. Focus all forward batteries on the same target. 10 Zephyrian ships opened fire simultaneously. Energy beams that could crack planets converged on the Relentless, bathing her in light bright enough to blind unprotected eyes. The alien weapons poured enough power into the human ship to boil oceans. The Relentless shrugged off the attack and kept coming. Captain Helen. Davis felt her ship shudder under the alien bombardment, but the damage was manageable. The armor plating absorbed and dispersed the energy, radiating excess heat through cooling systems designed for prolonged abuse. The ship's designers had built her to survive nuclear fire. Exotic energy weapons were just another day at the office. Armor temperature within acceptable limits, reported Chief Engineer Bob Miller. Hull integrity at 97%. All weapon systems ready. Return fire, Davis ordered. The Relentless opened up with her main batteries. 6 railguns fired in sequence, accelerating tungsten projectiles to 10% of light speed. The projectiles crossed the gap between fleets in seconds, too fast for energy-based point defense systems to track. The first projectile struck a Zephyrian cruiser amidships. The exotic matter hull, designed to phase between dimensions to avoid damage, proved useless against a chunk of metal moving at relativistic speeds. The projectile punched through the ship like paper, detonating the exotic matter core and creating a brief new star. Impossible, Vexthul whispered as his scanners confirmed the cruiser's destruction. Primitive kinetic weapons cannot penetrate dimensional shielding. Prime Calculator 7's quantum processors struggled to analyze the data. Kinetic projectile velocity exceeded defensive parameters. Dimensional phasing requires finite transition time. Impact occurred during vulnerable phase. The alien fleet had never encountered weapons that simply ignored their defenses. Energy shields could deflect energy beams, Dimensional phasing could avoid exotic matter weapons, but nothing could stop a chunk of metal moving fast enough to punch through reality itself. More human ships opened fire. The destroyer Iron Wolf launched a spread of nuclear missiles, each one carrying a warhead designed to crack fortress worlds. The Helix Consortium ships attempted to intercept them with quantum disruptors, only to discover that nuclear weapons did not care about quantum mechanics. The explosions lit up the void like miniature suns. 3 alien ships vanished in nuclear fire, their advanced hulls no match for weapons that operated on simple physics rather than exotic principles. War leader Thokvar watched his bioships attempt to adapt to the human weapons. Living armor tried to evolve defenses against kinetic impacts, but evolution required time that the human projectiles did not allow. Ships designed to learn from each attack instead learned what it felt like to die. The space between Earth and its moon became a graveyard of burning alien ships. What had started as a confident assault by 300 advanced vessels was turning into a nightmare that defied everything the galaxy understood about warfare. Captain Rachel Turner guided the Thunderbolt straight into the heart of the alien formation. Her ship absorbed hit after hit from weapons that should have destroyed her instantly. Energy beams that could melt asteroids barely scratched her armor. Quantum disruptors that could unmake matter bounced off hull plating built by engineers who understood that sometimes thick metal was better than clever. Physics. Hull temperature. Rising but stable, reported Chief Engineer Mike Foster. Cooling systems operating at 60% capacity. All weapon systems ready for close engagement. Turner nodded as her ship closed to point-blank range with a cluster of Zephyrian vessels. The aliens had never fought an enemy crazy enough to ram their formations. Their elegant crystal ships were designed for long-range combat, using superior technology to destroy enemies before they could respond. Fire all batteries, Turner ordered. The Thunderbolt unleashed everything she had. Railguns fired tungsten slugs that punched through crystal hulls like they were made of glass. Nuclear missiles detonated against exotic matter shields, creating explosions that overloaded defensive systems never designed to handle such crude power. Plasma cannons bathed enemy ships in fire hot enough to melt steel. 3 Zephyrian cruisers died in the first salvo. Their beautiful crystal hulls cracked and shattered, exotic matter cores detonating in cascades of rainbow light. The survivors tried to retreat, but found themselves trapped by their own formations. High Commander Vexthul watched his fleet falling apart and felt something he had never experienced before: fear. His ships were dying to weapons that belonged in museums. His advanced technology was proving useless against enemies too primitive to understand why they should lose. All ships, tactical withdrawal to long range, he commanded. Maintain formation and concentrate fire on individual targets. But the human ships were not cooperating with Zephyrian tactical doctrine. Instead of maintaining proper distances and engaging in civilized combat, they were charging into the alien formation like mad animals. The heavy cruiser Relentless rammed a Helix Consortium battleship, her thick armor crushing the elegant metal hull while her weapons fired at contact range. Commander Helen Davis felt her ship shudder as she plowed through the alien vessel. Damage reports flooded in from all sections, but the Relentless had been built to take punishment. Her designers had assumed she would be rammed, shot, and blown up repeatedly. They had built her to survive all of it. Ramming damage to forward sections, reported Damage Control Chief Ann Clark. Hull breach on Deck 7, sealed and isolated. Forward railgun battery still operational. Davis smiled grimly and selected her next target. A Corvin bioship was trying to flank her, its living weapons seeking weak points in her armor. The creature ship adapted its attacks in real time, learning from each exchange. Unfortunately for it, the Relentless had no weak points. The bioship fired living projectiles that burrowed into the human ship's hull, seeking vital systems to destroy. They found meter-thick armor plating, redundant systems, and backup power supplies. The living weapons died of frustration before they could find anything important to attack. Meanwhile, the destroyer Iron Wolf demonstrated why human weapons were so effective. Captain Steve Adams had positioned his ship to attack a group of Helix Consortium vessels that were trying to coordinate their quantum computers for a massive joint strike. Nuclear torpedoes ready, reported Weapons Officer Jane Miller. Targeting the lead ship. Fire all tubes, Adams ordered. 20 nuclear warheads streaked toward the alien formation. The Helix Consortium ships attempted to intercept them with quantum disruptors, calculating the exact frequency needed to unmake the primitive weapons. Their computers processed millions of calculations in microseconds, finding the perfect solution. Then the warheads detonated. Nuclear weapons did not care about quantum calculations. They operated on simple principles that could not be disrupted or redirected. When atoms split, they released energy according to laws older than the galaxy itself. The explosions vaporized 3 alien ships and severely damaged 2 others. Prime Calculator 7 experienced something like panic as his quantum processors tried to understand what had happened. The humans were using weapons that ignored the fundamental principles of modern warfare. How could a civilization fight effectively without quantum mechanics or exotic matter manipulation? The answer was becoming clear across the battlefield. Humans fought with weapons that worked regardless of how advanced their enemies were. Kinetic projectiles did not care about energy shields. Nuclear explosions ignored dimensional phasing. Raw force trumped elegant solutions every time. Major Susan Carter coordinated fighter operations from the carrier Devastator. Her pilots flew ships that looked like flying bricks compared to sleek alien interceptors. They were slow, heavily armored, and absolutely lethal in the hands of someone who understood their capabilities. Red Squadron engaging Zephyrian fighters, reported Squadron Leader Tom Wright. Enemy attempting to outmaneuver us. The Zephyrian interceptors were works of art, capable of shifting between dimensions to avoid enemy fire. They danced around the human fighters like ghosts, firing energy beams from impossible angles. For 30 seconds, they looked like they might succeed. Then the human pilots opened fire. Human fighters carried weapons designed for close combat in debris fields. Rotary cannons that fired thousands of rounds per second, creating walls of projectiles that filled space itself. The Zephyrian fighters could phase between dimensions, but they had to exist in normal space to fire their weapons. Splash 6 bandits, Wright reported as alien fighters died around him. They're fast, but they can't take a hit. The alien interceptors had been designed for dueling, not brawling. When human fighters closed to knife-fighting range, elegant maneuvers became useless. The humans simply filled space with enough projectiles to hit anything that existed in normal reality. Admiral Jack Turner watched the battle unfold from the bridge of the Sovereign. His ancient fleet was systematically destroying an enemy that should have been impossible to defeat. Ships built centuries ago with primitive technology were proving superior to the most advanced vessels in the galaxy. Casualty report, he requested. Thunderbolt reports moderate damage, but all systems operational. Communications Officer Lisa Park responded. Relentless has lost forward armor but maintains combat effectiveness. Iron Wolf took a direct hit from an exotic matter beam but reports no systems damage. Turner nodded with satisfaction. His ships were performing exactly as designed. They absorbed incredible punishment and kept fighting because their builders had learned warfare in the ruins of human civilization. War leader Thokvar made one last desperate attempt to salvage the battle. His bioships had finally adapted to human weapons, growing new armor that could theoretically resist kinetic impacts. He led a charge against the human battleship Sovereign, confident that evolved defenses would prove superior to primitive engineering. The Sovereign opened fire with her main batteries. 12 railguns fired in sequence, each projectile moving fast enough to punch through planets. The bioship's evolved armor lasted exactly as long as it took the tungsten slugs to cross the gap between fleets. 5 Corvin vessels died instantly. Their living hulls could not evolve fast enough to survive impacts from projectiles moving at significant fractions of light speed. Evolution required time, and human weapons allowed no time for adaptation. As alien ships burned around them, the human fleet maintained perfect formation. They had taken damage, but nothing that threatened their combat effectiveness. These ships had been built by people who understood that war was not a game played by rules. High Commander, Vexthal realized with growing horror that his superior civilization was losing to barbarians with antique weapons. Everything he believed about galactic warfare was proving wrong in the face of human determination and primitive engineering that simply refused to break. The battle was over, but High Commander Vexthal refused to accept what his sensors were telling him. Of his 300 ships, fewer than 50 remained operational. The rest floated dead in space or had been completely destroyed by weapons that should not have been able to scratch his advanced hulls. The human fleet hung in space like a pack of scarred predators. Their ships showed damage from the fight, but nothing that stopped them from functioning. Armor plating glowed red-hot from energy weapon impacts. Hull breaches had been sealed with emergency patches, but every single human vessel remained combat-ready. "Sir, we have incoming transmission from the human fleet," reported Sub-Commander Krelnith. His voice carried the shock of someone whose entire understanding of warfare had been shattered in a single battle. "Put it through," Vexthul commanded, his light form flickering with barely controlled rage and confusion. Admiral Kate Morrison appeared on the main display. She stood on the bridge of a ship that looked like it had been built in a scrapyard, surrounded by equipment that belonged in a museum. Behind her, human crew members worked at stations that used physical controls instead of thought interfaces. "High Commander Vexthul," Morrison said calmly, "I believe you wanted to discuss terms." "Terms?" Vexthul's energy form flared brighter. "You have destroyed ships that represented thousands of years of technological advancement with primitive weapons that should not exist." "Should not exist according to who?" Morrison asked. "Your civilization developed weapons designed to fight other advanced species. We developed weapons designed to work when everything else failed." Prime Calculator 7 processed this statement through quantum computers that had been calculating battle outcomes for millennia. The results made no logical sense. Human technology violates optimal efficiency parameters by factors ranging from 12 to 47. "Your ships should be inferior in every measurable category." Captain Ryan Walsh stepped into view beside Morrison. "Our ships were not built to be efficient. They were built to survive and keep fighting when survival seemed impossible." War Leader Thokvar's biomechanical face twisted with fury on another channel. "Your species fights without honor. You use crude weapons and brutal tactics. You show no respect for the art of warfare." "Honor does not stop kinetic projectiles," Commander Lisa Brooks observed as she joined the conversation. "Art does not matter when your ship is burning around you." The alien commanders fell silent as the implications sank in. They had approached this conflict expecting to teach primitive humans about superior technology and civilized warfare. Instead, they had learned what happened when advanced civilizations met enemies who had never forgotten how to fight for survival. Admiral Jack Turner's voice came over the fleet communication channel from the Sovereign. "All surviving alien vessels have 30 minutes to begin withdrawal from this system. Any ship that remains after that deadline will be considered hostile and dealt with accordingly." "You dare threaten the Zephyrian Empire?" Vexthul demanded. "We have fleets across the galaxy. This defeat means nothing." Morrison's expression did not change. "This defeat means you learned something important about humanity today. We suggest you share that knowledge with your empire before they make the same mistake." "What did we learn?" Prime Calculator 7 asked, his quantum processors genuinely seeking to understand the data. "You learned that advanced does not always mean better," Morrison replied. "You developed weapons and defenses based on fighting other advanced species. We developed weapons based on fighting anything that threatened our survival." She gestured to the human ships visible on the display. "These vessels were built during the darkest period of human history. Our own species was trying to destroy itself with weapons that could crack planets. We learned to build ships that could survive nuclear fire, kinetic bombardment, and enemies who would never surrender." Captain Rachel Turner's voice came over the comm from the Thunderbolt. "Every system on these ships has backups for the backups. Every weapon is designed to work when computers fail. Every piece of armor is thick enough to stop weapons we hoped we would never face again." "But why?" Vexthul asked, his energy form dimming with something like comprehension. "Why build such crude and inefficient vessels when elegant solutions exist?" "Because elegant solutions break," Admiral Turner answered from the Sovereign. "When you are fighting for the survival of your species, you do not want elegant. You want something that works when everything else has failed, and keeps working when failure means extinction." Major Susan Carter's fighters began forming up around the carrier Devastator, their hulls scarred but intact. "Our fighters were designed to operate in debris fields where sensors fail and communications are jammed. They carry enough armor to survive direct hits and enough ammunition to fight for hours without resupply." War Leader Thokvar studied the human vessels with new understanding. "Your ships are not primitive. They are specialized for total warfare." "Our entire civilization was specialized for total warfare," Morrison confirmed. We spent centuries fighting each other with weapons that could destroy continents. The ships that survived those wars were the ones that could take impossible amounts of damage and keep fighting. And now, Prime Calculator 7 asked. Now we prefer peaceful solutions, Morrison said. But we never forgot the lessons we learned when peace was not an option. These ships represent what happens when a species has no choice but to fight or die. The alien survivors began to truly comprehend what they had encountered. Humanity had not stumbled into galactic civilization as primitives playing with advanced technology. They had arrived as veterans of conflicts that would have destroyed most other species. Your warning has been noted, Vexthul finally admitted. The Zephyrian Empire will reconsider its position regarding human integration. Wise choice, Morrison replied. We have no desire to conquer or control other species. We simply want to be left alone to develop as we see fit. And if other civilizations choose not to leave you alone, War Leader Thokvar asked. Admiral Turner's answer came from the Sovereign's bridge, where ancient weapon systems still glowed with ready power. Then they will learn what these ships were really built for. The surviving alien vessels began their withdrawal from Earth's solar system. As they departed, their crews transmitted detailed reports to their respective governments. The reports contained sensor data, tactical analysis, and one universal recommendation: do not underestimate human capabilities again. High Commander Vexthul looked back at the human fleet one final time before his ship jumped to hyperspace. The 67 vessels hung in perfect formation, their crews already beginning repairs that would have them ready for the next battle. Ships built during humanity's darkest hour, crewed by people who understood that sometimes the old ways were the best ways. On Earth, civilian populations watched the alien fleet retreat and felt pride in their ancient warships. The vessels that had once been symbols of humanity's capacity for self-destruction had become symbols of their determination to survive against any odds. Admiral Morrison remained on the bridge of her command ship as the last alien vessel disappeared into hyperspace. Around her, the fleet began the process of standing down from combat alert, but the ships would not return to their hidden berths immediately. The galaxy needed time to process what had happened here. Signal from Earth Command reported. Communications Officer Lisa Park. They want to know if we need reinforcements. Morrison smiled for the first time since the battle began. Tell them we appreciate the offer, but these old ships seem to have everything under control. The ancient fleet turned toward home, their mission complete. Behind them, they left wreckage that would serve as a reminder to the galaxy that humanity's greatest strength was not their technology or their diplomacy. Their greatest strength was their absolute refusal to surrender, backed by ships built by people who understood that sometimes survival required being more dangerous than anything that threatened you. The massive station called Meridian Prime hung in the void between star systems like a giant metal flower. Its gleaming corridors stretched for miles in every direction, housing delegates from across the galaxy. Today, those corridors buzzed with tension that could cut through steel. Admiral Kate Morrison walked through the main hall with steady steps. Her blue uniform bore the simple patch of United Earth Defense Force. No fancy decorations, no glowing symbols like the aliens wore. Behind her walked Captain Ryan Walsh and Commander Lisa Brooks. All three humans looked calm, but their eyes stayed alert. The Galactic Council chamber rose up like a vast dome above them. Floating platforms held delegates from dozens of species. The Zephyrians sat on platforms made of pure crystal that hummed with energy. Their bodies looked like living starlight wrapped in flowing robes. High Commander Vexthul led them, his form shifting between solid and pure light. On another platform, the Helix Consortium delegates sat perfectly still. They looked like walking machines made of silver and gold, with glowing circuits running under their metal skin. Quantum computers served as their brains, processing millions of calculations every second. The Corvin Federation occupied the largest platform. Their biomechanical bodies combined flesh and metal in ways that hurt to look at. Living weapons grew from their arms like extra limbs. Their ships could heal damage and adapt to any threat. Other species filled the remaining platforms: energy beings, hive minds, creatures that existed in multiple dimensions at once. All of them had one thing in common. They looked at the three humans with barely hidden amusement. Admiral Morrison stepped onto the human platform. It was smaller than the others and made of simple metal and glass. No exotic materials, no impossible technology, Just solid engineering that worked. High Commander Vexthul's voice filled the chamber like music made of lightning. The Galactic Council recognizes the presence of the human delegation. You have been summoned to hear the final decision of the Zephyrian Empire. The human admiral nodded once. We're listening. Your species has been deemed primitive and dangerous. Your crude weapons threaten the peace of civilized space. Your expansion must be controlled. Vexthul's form grew brighter. The Zephyrian Empire offers humanity one final chance. Submit to our guidance. Accept integration into our empire. Learn to abandon your violent ways. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the alien delegates. The Helix Consortium's spokesperson, a being called Prime Calculator 7, spoke in a voice like grinding gears. Our projections show human technology developing along destructive paths. Integration offers optimal outcomes for galactic stability. The Corvan war leader slammed a biomechanical fist against his platform. Their ships are metal coffins powered by explosions. Their weapons throw rocks. They fight like animals. His scarred face twisted in disgust. But they breed fast and spread faster. Better to leash them now. Admiral Morrison listened to each species explain why humanity needed to be controlled. The Altarians worried about human expansion into their trade routes. The Vegans feared human colonies would pollute nearby systems. The Crystalline Collective simply found human thoughts too chaotic to tolerate. When the voices died down, Kate Morrison spoke. Earth appreciates the Council's concerns. We understand that our methods might seem crude to more advanced civilizations. Several aliens nodded, pleased that the humans seemed reasonable. However, Morrison continued, humanity must respectfully decline the Zephyrian offer. The chamber erupted in shocked whispers. Energy beings flickered with surprise. Biomechanical weapons clicked and whirred. High Commander Vexthul's light dimmed to a cold blue. You refuse the generous offer of the Zephyrian Empire? We do. Then you choose war with a civilization that has conquered 1,000 worlds? Captain Walsh stepped forward. We choose to remain free. Prime Calculator 7's circuits glowed brighter as quantum computers processed this unexpected data. Human vessels detected in this system number 47. Zephyrian fleet strength exceeds 300 units. Probability of human victory approaches 0. Commander Brooks smiled for the first time since entering the chamber. Math can be funny sometimes. Vexthul's form solidified into something almost solid, radiating menace. Your primitive fleet cannot stand against Zephyrian crystal ships. Our exotic matter drives give us speed your rockets cannot match. Our energy weapons will dissolve your metal hulls like sugar in rain. Probably, Morrison agreed. The casual admission confused many delegates. Why would humans choose certain defeat? You have 72 of your hours to reconsider, Vexthul announced. Our armada waits at the edge of the system. When time expires, we advance on your homeworld. Your museum's pieces will burn, and your species will learn the price of defying a superior civilization. The Corvan war leader laughed, a sound like grinding metal. I have seen recordings of human warships. Thick metal shells filled with fragile organics. Chemical rockets push them through space like falling rocks. Nuclear weapons require proximity to function. He gestured dismissively. Children's toys compared to adaptive bioships. Other aliens joined the mockery. The energy beings spoke of weapons that existed in 17 dimensions. The machine intelligence described quantum disruptors that could unmake matter itself. The hive minds boasted of ships that thought and planned faster than any individual could react. Throughout the ridicule, the three humans remained calm. Morrison's hand moved to a small device on her belt. She pressed a button twice, paused, then pressed it 3 more times. High Commander Vexthul noticed the gesture. Calling for help, Admiral? Your fleet is already outnumbered 6-1 by vessels in this system alone. Just letting Earth know our position, Morrison replied. The session ended with formal declarations of war. As delegates began filing out, many stopped to express sympathy for the humans. Some offered to accept human refugees when the inevitable slaughter ended. Others suggested that quick surrender might save human civilians. Admiral Morrison thanked them all politely. Captain Walsh gathered their few possessions. Commander Brooks made notes on a simple paper tablet. No advanced technology that could be monitored or hacked. As they walked back through Meridian Prime's corridors, Walsh asked quietly, "Think they bought it?" "Completely," Brooks replied. "They see exactly what we want them to see." Morrison nodded. 47 ships visible in their scans. Old destroyers and cruisers running standard patrol patterns. Nothing to suggest we're anything more than stubborn primitives with a death wish. And the real fleet? Walsh asked. Getting the wake-up call right about now. Morrison checked her chronometer. Jack should be opening the deep vaults within the hour. They reached their transport, a simple shuttle that looked like a flying metal box compared to the alien vessels around it. As they prepared to depart, a Zephyrian observer approached. Admiral Morrison, the being said, its voice carrying genuine regret. Your species shows courage, but courage cannot defeat superior technology. Please reconsider. Kate Morrison looked at the alien with something that might have been pity. Tell me something. In all your conquests, have you ever fought an enemy that had nothing left to lose? Desperation is not strategy, human. No, Morrison agreed as she climbed into the shuttle. But it makes for one hell of a motivator. The shuttle's engines ignited with chemical fire, lifting the humans away from Meridian Prime. Behind them, alien delegates congratulated themselves on their patience with primitive species. None of them noticed Commander Brooks dropping a small listening device into a waste receptacle. None of them suspected that humanity had been planning for this moment since their first contact with galactic civilization. Most importantly, none of them knew about the ancient shipyards hidden on Luna's far side, where ships built for humanity's darkest wars were awakening after centuries of sleep.